Om Ajnanathimirantasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone for today's morning reading. I have been informed that we are supposed to read from verse number 22nd onwards. Alright, so let's begin with it. Purushaha saparha partha bhaktyalabhya sunanyaya yasyantastani bhutani yena sarvam idam tatam. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Although he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading and everything is situated within him. Purport. Those who would like to read, they can keep their hands up. I'll call upon you. It is clearly created stated that the supreme destination from which there is no return is the abode of Krishna, the Supreme Person. The Brahma Samhita describes the supreme abode as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, a place where everything is full of spiritual bliss. All the variegatedness manifest there is of the quality of spiritual bliss. Nothing there is material. That variegatedness is the spiritual expansion of the Supreme Godhead Himself. The spiritual or superior energy described in the 7th chapter is also manifest there. As far as this material world is concerned, although the Lord is always in His supreme abode, He is nonetheless all-pervading by His material energy. So by His spiritual and material energies, He is present everywhere, both in the material and in the spiritual universes. Yasyantastani means that everything is sustained within Him, within either His spiritual or material energy. The Lord is all-pervading by these two energies. To enter Krishna's supreme abode or the innumerable Vaikuntha planets is possible only by bhakti, devotion, service, clearly indicated here by the word bhaktya. No other process can help one attain the supreme abode. The Vedas, Gopal, Tapani, Upanishad also describes the supreme abode and the supreme personality of Godhead. Eko Sarvagaha Krishnaha. In that abode, there is only one supreme personality of Godhead whose name is Krishna. It's something interesting. Prabhupada again and again, says the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you say what is one thing repeated the most, is this word, the whole Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada could have said, in that abode there is only one Lord whose name is Krishna. So this is my question to all of you, which I would give some minutes in the end of the session today for you to share your thoughts. Why Srila Prabhupada could have just, when he said Supreme Personality of Godhead, then Prabhupada could have just said in that abode there is only one Lord whose name is Krishna. Why Prabhupada have to say Supreme Personality of Godhead again? Think about it. He is a supreme merciful deity, and although situated there as one, he has expanded himself into millions and millions of plenary expansions. The Vedas compare the Lord to a tree standing still, yet bearing many varieties of fruits, flowers, and changing leaves. The plenary expansions of the Lord who preside over the Vaikuntha planets are four-armed, and they are known as by a variety of names: Purushottama, Trivikrama, Keshava, Madhava, Aniruddha, Rishikesh, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Sridhar, Vasudev, Damodar, Janardhan, Narayana, Vamana, Padmana, etc. The Brahma Samhita also confirms that all the Lord is always in the supreme abode, Goloka Vrindavan is pervading, so that everything is going on nicely. Goloka eva nivasati akhilatma bhutaha. Stated in the Vedas, Parasya Shaktir Vidhaiva Shruyate Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriyacha. His energies are so expensive that they systematically conduct everything in the cosmic manifestation without a flaw. Although the Supreme Lord is far, far away. Wow, what a beautiful purport. Reading the translation again, the Supreme Personality Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. So yesterday we discussed about material world versus spiritual world. Now today Prabhupada is saying how you can attain that. Only possible by bhakti we can attain him. Text number 23. Yatra kale tu navrittam chaiva yoginah prayatayanti tam kalam vakshyami bharata sabha. So now how that personality can be attained at the end of life has been described here in the sense there are different ways described in the scriptures because there are different paths given about, let's say, karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, and bhakti yoga. So what do the yogis do to go to an auspicious destination? Oh, best of the Bharata, I shall now explain to you the different times at which passing away from this world the yogis does not, or the yogi does or does not come back. We just had Makar Sankranti, the day of Uttarayana. So that is considered to be very auspicious by the yogis to give up their body. All right, Papat, whose hands were up? Okay, Ravi Bhatkar Prabhu, go ahead. Read the Papat.
The unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are totally surrendered souls, do not care when they leave their bodies or by what method. They leave everything in Krishna's hands and so easily and happily return to Godhead. But those who are not unalloyed devotees and who depend instead on such methods of spiritual realization as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Hatha Yoga must leave the body at a suitable time in order to be sure of whether or not they will return to the world of birth and death.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead.
If the yogi is perfect, he can select the time and situation for leaving this material world. But if he is not so expert, his success depends on his accidentally passing away at a certain suitable time. The suitable times at which one passes away and does not come back are explained by the Lord in the next verse. According to Acharya Baladev Vidya Bhushan, the Sanskrit word kal used herein refers to the presiding deity of time. Hare Krishna.
Text number 24. Agni Jyotirha Shuklaha Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayat Gachanti Brahma Brahma Vidojana Uttarayanam. You know, Krishna mentions those who know the Supreme Brahman attain this Supreme by passing away from the world during the influence of the fiery God in the light at an auspicious moment of the day, during the fortnight of the waxing moon, or during the 6 months when the sun travels in the north. Purport. Madharanjana, go ahead. Start reading.
When fire, light, day, and the fortnight of the moon are mentioned, it is to be understood that over all of them there are various presiding deities who make arrangements for the passage of the soul. At the time of death, the mind carries one on the path to a new life. If one leaves the body at the time designated above, either accidentally or by arrangement, it is possible for him to attain the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Mystics who are advanced in yoga practice can arrange the time and place to leave the body. Others have no control. If by accident they leave at an auspicious moment, then they will not return to the cycle of birth and death. But otherwise, there is every possibility that they will have to return. However, for the pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear of returning, whether he leaves the body at an auspicious or inauspicious moment by accident or arrangement. Hare
Text
Krishna.
number 25. Dhumo ratre sata Krishna sanmasa dakshinayanam tatra chandramasham jyoti yogi prapya nivartate. Translation of verse number 25. The mystics who passes away from this world during the smoke, the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or the 6 months when the sun passes to south, reaches the moon planet, but again comes back. Purports. Oh, we have Mother Priyanka. Go ahead.
Purport, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila Muni mentioned that those who are expert in putative activities and sacrificial methods on earth attain to the moon at death. These elevated souls live on the moon for about 10,000 years by demigod calculations and enjoy life by drinking somarasa. They eventually return to earth. This means that on the moon there are higher classes of living beings, though they may not be perceived by the gross senses.
So, how is ever possible for the lunar mission to be successful? Impossible. They're fooling around people for more than 50 years now. 1967, they had the first lunar mission. It's almost, what, 55 or 56 years past. Yet they're attempting to send even a dog on the moon, which they're not able to do that so far. And even if they go to moon, how can they not able to find an advanced civilization when it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita here? Which means they're ending up at some wrong place. Text number 26. Shukla Krishna Gathiyete Jagataha Shashvate Mate Ekayayatina Vrittim Anvayavartate Punaha. According to Vedic opinion, there are two ways of passing from this world, one in light or in darkness. When one passes in light, he does not come back. But when one passes in darkness, he returns. Purport: the same description of departure and return is quoted by Acharya Baldev Vidyabhushan from Chandogya Upanishad. Those who are fruited laborers, philosophers, speculators from time immemorial, constantly going and coming. Actually, they do not attain ultimate salvation, for they do not surrender to Krishna. Okay, text number 7. See, this all raises a question. The question is, in the beginning of this chapter, Krishna says, Antakale chamameva smaranutva kalevaram. If while quitting the body you remember me, you attain my destination. Here at the end of the chapter, Krishna is talking about if you leave your body in appropriate time, then you accordingly get the next destination. If you leave your body in the 6 months of Uttarayan, you go ahead. In other words, you don't come back. And if you leave your body in Dakshayana, then you have to stay in the material world. Of course, this is not for everyone. This is meant for yogis, sense control, who are thinking about Brahman, etc. So, does it holds true for devotees now? For yogis, it is described. What about for the bhakti yogis? I mean, Ashtanga yogis, it is described. What about devotees? That will be discussed. Although the devotees know these two paths, Arjuna, they are never bewildered. Therefore, they are always fixed in devotion. But would like to read. Mother Sangeeta, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Purport.
Yes.
Krishna is here advising Arjuna that he should not be disturbed by the different paths the soul can be when leaving the material world. A devotee of the Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident. The devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna. He should know that concern over either of these paths is troublesome. The best way to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness is to be always dovetail in his service, and this will make one's path to the spiritual kingdom safe, certain, and direct. The word Yoga Yukta is especially significant in this verse. One who is firm in yoga is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness in all his activities. Sri Rupa Goswami advises Anasaktasya
Vishyan Yataharam Upayunjataha.
Thank you, Prabhuji. One should be unattached in material affairs and do everything in Krishna consciousness. By this system, which is called Yukta Vairagya, one attains perfection. Therefore, the devotee is not disturbed by these descriptions because he knows that his passage to the supreme abode is guaranteed by devotional service.
So, in other words, as Lord Shri Krishna also mentions, Prabhupada is explaining that for devotees, they are not bothered about time. This is again another distraction for the mind. Rather, we are focused more on remembering Krishna. If we do so, it itself guarantees success. Text number 28. Vedeshu yagneshu taposu chaiva daneshu yatmanya phalam pradishtam atyeti tassarvamidam viditva yogi paramsanam upayati chadyam. A person who accepts the path of devotion service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and furtive activities. Simply by performing devotion service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. All right, little big paragraph. Let's see who is yet to read. Mother Induradhika, you can read. Unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. The verse is the summation of the 7th and 8th chapters, which particularly deal with Krishna consciousness and devotional service. One has to study the Vedas under the guidance of the spiritual master and undergo many austerities and penances while living under his care. A brahmachari has to live in the home of the spiritual master, just like a servant, and he must beg alms from door to door and bring them to the spiritual master. He takes food only under the master's order, and if the master neglects to call the student for food that day, the student fasts. These are some of the Vedic principles for observing brahmacharya. After the student studies the Vedas under the master for some time, at least from age 5 to 20, he becomes a man of perfect character. Study of the Vedas is not meant for the recreation of armchair speculators, but for the formation of character. After this training, the brahmachari is allowed to enter into household life and marry. When he is a householder, he has to perform many sacrifices so that he may achieve further enlightenment. He must also give charity according to the country, time, and candidate, discriminating among good charity in goodness, in passion, and in ignorance, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Then, after retiring from household life, upon accepting the order of Vanaprastha, he undergoes severe penances, living in forests, dressing with tree bark, not shaving, etc. By carrying out the orders of brahmacharya, householder life, Vanaprastha, and finally sannyasa, one becomes elevated to the perfectional stage of life. Some are then elevated to the heavenly kingdoms, and when they become even more advanced, they are liberated in the spiritual sky, either in the impersonal Brahmajyoti or in the Vaikuntha planets or Krishna Loka. This is the path outlined by Vedic literatures. The beauty of Krishna consciousness, however, is that by one stroke, by engaging in devotional service, one can surpass all the rituals of the different orders of life. The words idam viditva indicate that one should understand the instructions given by Sri Krishna in this chapter and the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One should try to understand these chapters not by scholarship or mental speculation, but by hearing them in association with devotees. Chapters 7 through 12 are the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The first 6 and the last 6 chapters are like coverings for the middle 6 chapters, which are especially protected by the Lord. If one is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita, especially these middle 6 chapters, in the association of devotees, then his life at once becomes glorified beyond all penances, sacrifices, charity, speculation, etc. For one can achieve all the results of these activities simply by Krishna consciousness. Who has a little faith in Bhagavad Gita should learn Bhagavad Gita from a devotee, because in the beginning of the 4th chapter, it is stated clearly that Bhagavad Gita can be understood only by devotees. No one else can perfectly understand the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore learn Bhagavad Gita from a devotee of Krishna, not from mental speculators. This is a sign of faith. When one searches for a devotee and fortunately gets a devotee's association, one actually begins to study and understand Bhagavad Gita. By advancement in the association of the devotee, one is placed in devotional service. And this service dispels all one's misgivings about Krishna or God and Krishna's activities, form, pastimes, name, and other features. After these misgivings have been perfectly cleared away, one becomes fixed in one's study. Then one relishes the study of Bhagavad Gita and attains the state of feeling always Krishna conscious. In the advanced stage, one falls completely in love with Krishna. This highest perfectional stage of life enables the devotee to be transferred to Krishna's abode in the spiritual sky, Goloka Vrindavana, where the devotee becomes eternally happy. Thus end the Bhagavad Gita purports to the 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Bhakti Vedanta purports. Not Bhagavad Gita purports. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports. Means purports written by Srila Prabhupada.
Sorry.
All right, so now we enter into the chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. Okay, Lord Krishna is the supreme Godhead, the supreme object of worship, the soul is related to him. Let's take a look at it. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Idam tu te guyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam Yajñatva mokshase shubhat. So, in the 8th chapter, Lord Shri Krishna have explained, particularly Arjuna had asked a question, 8 questions, and the last question was, Prayana Kali, at the time of death, how to remember. So, how to remember Krishna is by remembering Krishna. How to remember Krishna? We have to practice remembrance of Krishna. And what practice we have to do to remember Krishna? Satachakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So here in 9th chapter, Lord Shri Krishna is going to speak about himself. 9th and 10th are primarily about that, so that the devotee's attraction develops towards the Lord. Particularly in the 9th chapter, the main subject matter, as would be highlighted in the very first verse, is about the merciful nature of the Lord. And the 10th chapter will describe the opulences of the Lord. So that when we know the nature of the Lord, opulences of the Lord, we would but be naturally attracted towards the Lord. And when we are attracted towards the Lord, our remembrance will increase. That is why you have a 9th chapter here, okay? Arjuna is not asking, Lord Shri Krishna is speaking here. So, idam tu te guhyatamam. Ab Arjuna, tum mujhse guhyatamam gyan sikho. Pravakshami anasuyave. Pravakshami, I'm gonna speak to you the most confidential knowledge. Why? Anasuyave, because you are non-envious. Jnanam vijnanam sahitam. Knowledge, realization, both with knowledge and realization. Yajnanatva mokshase asubha. Knowing this, you will be liberated and freed from all inauspiciousness. That's the translation. Guri Baba. Purport. Okay. Who will like to read? I don't know. I can't see. Let me just see. All hands are up there. Okay. Sonam, go ahead. Nikhil and Sonam, unmute.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As a devotee hears more and more about Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The message of Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies. And these potencies can be realized if topic regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed among devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, described in this 9th chapter, matters more confidential than any. He already disclosed. He has already disclosed. Sorry. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. 1 minute. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the 2nd and 3rd chapter, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are especially related to devotional services, and because they being enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter that anyone who is engaged in that way is liberated person.
Continue.
Now, the first verse has specific significance. The words idam jnanam, this knowledge, refers to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. By the practice of these 9 elements of devotional service, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. When one's heart is thus cleared of material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and the spiritual activities of one who understands that he is not the body. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. Now, in chapter 9, the glories of the Lord will be further delineated. The Sanskrit word anushuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. So, such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. Hare Krishna.
Very, very important point Prabhupada is mentioning about Anasuyavi. Anasuya means non-envious. We should be very careful from whom we are hearing or whose commentary we are reading. Sometimes people tell me I have several versions of Bhagavad Gita with me. You don't need several versions of Bhagavad Gita, you only need one correct version of Bhagavad Gita. And they have read several versions of Bhagavad Gita, still they don't understand even a fig out of Bhagavad Gita. So we have to be very careful if in case you know such people who read Bhagavad Gita have the different versions of Bhagavad Gita, I would say it would be great service done for such people and also for your own betterment, benefit. You should gift a copy of Bhagavad Gita by Srila Prabhupada to them so that they can start reading the correct version and come to the right path. Text number 2. Now Krishna speaks profound statements. Rajavidya Rajagoyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshvagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartam Apayam. So now Krishna says the knowledge that I'm about to give you, what will be the result of it? This is king of education. Rajagoyam, the most confidential. Pavitram, all pure. Idamuttamam, the best. Pratyakshvagamam Dharmyam. It gives you pratiksha, it gives you perception of the self and of the Lord. Pratiksha swagamam dharmayam is a principle of religion. Susukum, it brings all auspiciousness. Kartum avayam, and it is everlasting. Those who make an attempt to study, they get an everlasting result. This knowledge, king of education, most secret, the purest, because it gives direct perception, self-realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So let's take this purport. Anyone else who have not yet read? How do I see devotees here? Who would like to read? Yes, okay. Okay, Ravi Prabhu, go ahead. You can read it.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautam, Kanad, Kapil, Yajna, Valkya, Chandilya, and Vaishwanar. And finally, there is Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge, they are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. The Bhagavad Gita, especially from the second chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. Antavanta ime deha nitya shokta shariri na. There is that is a confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from this body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal, but that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that's not a fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active, and its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of the spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated that here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Puran, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow, it takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree, then it flowers and bears fruit, and when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the results or the fruit of that sinful action are still to be enjoyed. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving us fruit, which we are enjoying as distress and pain. As explained in the 28th verse of the 7th chapter, a person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. This statement is confirmed in the Padma Puran: Aprabdha phalam papam kutam bijam alonmuktam krame naiva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratat manam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotion service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttamam, the purest.
Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada is describing here Pavitram Uttamam. What it means, unlike any other process, any rituals, any purtive activities cannot free us from our sinful desires. They can, for a time being, delay the reactions, but they cannot uproot the seed of committing the sinful action. That is what is being described. Therefore, Prabhupada quoted the shloka, and therefore Prabhupada previously was talking about the fruitive activities. I'll read this last few parts so I can explain quickly. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means material world or darkness. Uttama, which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes appears that devotees engage just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the modes of nature. It is said that execution devotions are so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived. We have practical experience that any person who is chanting the Hare Krishna holy name. So this is Pratyaksha Swagamam. That is what Prabhupada is saying, direct perception. So whoever chants the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In course of chanting without offenses, feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing but in trying to broadcast the message of activities as well, in other words, one not only studies and hears and chants, but also shares the message of Krishna consciousness with others, or if engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. As I just spoke, we should think of gifting a copy of Bhagavad Gita to those who we know reading, but some other commentaries. This is one. Goranga, kahan gaya? Oh, Hare Krishna. यहाँ पे था, somewhere. This advancement in spiritual life does not depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. Why? The method itself is so pure. By simply engaging in, we become all purified. Oh, the purport is huge. It goes on. It's already 7:17. All right, so we'll continue tomorrow. I'm marking it for myself here, and we'll read the purport tomorrow because the big purport, where Prabhupada talks about all these qualities. So what we are discussing is Rajvidya, king of knowledge, the most confidential, all pure. Uttama means transcendental. Pratyaksva gamam, you get an experience. Dharmyam, the principle of religion. The principle of religion is God realization. So you get that experience, spiritual happiness. Susukham, kartum abhyam, it's everlasting. So we saw some of it. Some of the, Prabhupada elaborated some of the points, and some of the points we'll see tomorrow when we continue the purport. So before we conclude here for today, I'd ask a question. Why does Srila Prabhupada often uses the word Supreme Personality Godhead? Each time, सुन लिया ना एक बार, बोल दिया बस काफी है. Why बार-बार? The main reason is, the foremost reason of that, I don't know how many of you thought in that direction, because time is less, I can't hear from you. I'll just give a pointer for that. Because we are so deeply envious. So deeply envious. So it's just to put into our head, you're not dealing with Krishna, ordinary human being. You're dealing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just to hammer that point, so at least it finally goes into our skull and finally to our heart. Krishna is the Supreme Personality Godhead, therefore. So don't take the subject matter of envy lightly. We are very deeply envious. It takes, it's not only about your chanting will purify you. Prabhupada mentioned chanting and seva and distribution of Krishna consciousness and others. That attracts mercy of the Lord, which is what going to purify us from envy. It doesn't go like this. It doesn't go like this. And as you continue to progress, you will have realization at your level how in different ways this envy manifests. Okay, so with that we'll pause here for today. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. So we have started in the 9th chapter. We are kind of reading the second verse. We'll take a reading tomorrow.